Rohan, we're ready.
Can you see me? Can you hear me? Shall I start? Okay. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 20, we read the inspiring account of Jesus' resurrection. The first day of the week cometh, Mary Magdalene, early, when it was yet dark, unto the sepulchre, and seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth and cometh to Simon Peter and to the other disciple whom Jesus loved, and saith unto them, They have taken away the Lord. Then the same day at evening became the first day of the week, when the doors were shut, where the disciples were assembled for the fear of the Jews, came Jesus and stood in their midst and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. The resurrection of Jesus, doubted by many, but affirmed by those who were close to him, was a miraculous event, though one not unique in history. For many great saints of other religions have appeared to their disciples after death. Sometimes their appearances have been as that of Jesus was, in flesh and blood form, and not only in vision. Paramhansa Yogananda relates in Autobiography of a Yogi the account of his guru Sri Yukteswar Ji's resurrection after his earthly passing. Miracles of this type are revealed only rarely to the masses, but accounts of them, related by men and women of reputed truthfulness, have inspired many devotees with faith in the reality of subtler than material states of existence. Resurrection, Yogananda explained, means transformation, ultimately from any lower state of being to a higher one. Worldly consciousness cannot imagine such transformation except in terms of perhaps an improvement of the present mess of potage with the addition of a new flavoring. Divine consciousness, however, is capable of taking the base metal of worldliness and transforming it into the spiritual gold of divine wisdom and love. In keeping with this truth, the Bhagavad Gita in the 9th chapter tells us, ye who into this ill world are come, fleeting and false, set your faith fast on me, fix heart and thought on me, adore me, bring offerings to me, make me prostrations, make me your supremest joy, and undivided unto my rest, your spirits shall be guided. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Oh, oh. Thank you, Rohan. That was beautiful. Good morning. Happy Easter morning, everyone. Peace be with you. It is I. That was Jesus's word to all his disciples on that Easter day. And this message is a message today of hope and rebirth and renewal. And for each one of us that are seeking God on a spiritual path, and to just know that every spiritual seeker has this example that we can learn to live by and resurrect ourselves to rise above the difficulties every time we get an opportunity, which is often if we're on the spiritual path. And let me begin with this beautiful, beautiful Whispers from Eternity poem by Paramhansa Yogananda. And it's entitled, Come to me, O Christ, as the divine shepherd of souls. O Christ, thou rarest flower of hearts, thou didst sail the storm-tossed lake of prejudiced minds. Its evil-scented, gloomy thought waves lashed like lily-tender soul. They crucified thee with their evil. They did thou shed on them the aroma of goodness and forgiveness, and help them to be purified by remorse, to make them attractively sweet-scented with thine all-loving soul flower. O thou great lover of all torn brothers, an unseen monument of the mightiest miracle of love was established in every heart with the magic of thy voice uttered, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Thou hast healed the cataract of hatred. We have now grown to see thy truth. Love thine enemies as thyself, for they are thy brothers, though sick and sleeping. Thou hast taught me not to increase their fervid blows of hatred with the bludgeons of revenge. Thine undying sympathy has inspired us to heal our brothers, suffering in the delirium of anger with the soothing salve of divine forgiveness. Thy crucifixion reminds us of the daily crucifixion of our own fortitude by trials, of our wisdom by ignorance, of our self-control by the scathing touch of temptation, and of our love by misunderstanding. Thy test on the cross proved the victory of divine wisdom over ignorance, of thy divine will over flesh, of thy happiness over pain, and of thy love over hatred. So art we heartened to hear our own crosses bravely and with faith. Teach us, when we are crucified by harshness, to pour out only sweetness, to bear with calmness the assaults of worry, and to give understanding unceasingly to those who unjustly hate us. O shepherd of souls, wandering hearts are seeking of themselves the one fold of divine devotion. We have heard that ever-calling music of infinite kindness. Our one desire is to find our home in thee, to receive the cosmic Father with the joy, open eyes of wisdom, and to know that all of us are sons of our own one God. Teach us to conquer the darkness of dividing selfishness, which prevents the gathering of all our brother souls into the one fold of spirit. Calling to one another by the watchword, love him who loves you and love all who love you not. And let us rally beneath the canopy of the universal oneness of the Christ. Amen. It's because of him that we know how to bear our crosses and to rise above the difficulties, to take that higher road when it's the most hardest. And I just think of when Jesus was in that garden, and he asked his disciples to guard for him so he would go and pray. He knew what was to come. He knew about the suffering, the betrayal, the arrest, the agony that was ahead of him. But they fell asleep, and the soldiers came for him. And Jesus prayed to God, God, let this cup pass from me. He knew what was to come. He knew that the suffering was to come. But his devotion to us, the sacrifice he was willing to make, he knew he had to become an example. He knew this divine love story was essential for him to go through this. And he said, not my will, thy will be done, God. Jesus tells us through this example, many, many things, many teachings. Keep watch, right? Keep watch. To solve every problem, cling to your sense of discipleship. So beautiful. Cling to your sense of discipleship. We're all disciples. We all make mistakes. We all forget about God. We all yell at people or be anxious or forget things or forget God in some circumstances. But he also told us to trust God no matter what, and that God will never let us down. And that Jesus's courage to go through The process of awakening is what we all need. He encouraged us, right? He gave inside of us courage. And that was his example, to know that courage, to hold that courage in our hearts as we walk through the tests that come our way, so that we can keep rising above the darkness, keep rising above the opportunities we have to just go asleep again, go back into delusion, go into forgetfulness. Because of him, we know true love and forgiveness. This is the greatest love story of all time. You know, when Jesus was being crucified and he was among the thieves, you know, he was in that group, and, you know, there was just this one thief that really saw through him. He really saw his divine qualities in the light that shined within him. And he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you're in your kingdom." And Jesus said, "I will see you in paradise." So when we make up our mind to attain Christ consciousness, Yogananda says, as Jesus did, God will respond no matter what. No matter what we've done in the past. We must conquer our human weaknesses and ego impulses. Jesus could have easily saved himself, says Yogananda, from crucifixion, but instead he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And so I remember a time when about 3 weeks ago, I went to church with my mom. She likes to go to St. Mary's by the Sea. And, you know, I was in this group of people, and it was really beautiful. All of a sudden, when everyone turned to each other and said, "Peace be with you," it felt like the disconnection, just everybody's heart opened and some community happened. There was a beautiful happening in that moment. And the priest talked about the beautiful story of when the Pharisees brought to Jesus a woman who was caught as an adulterer. And they said, according to Moses' law, we must stone this woman to death. This is her punishment. And Jesus said, you know, as they really said, "Teacher, you know, this woman, we have to do this." And Jesus said, "Let the one who has never sinned cast the first stone." And that's what we all need to remember. With judgment, with anger towards people, when we hold resentments, each one of us is a beautiful child of God. And he said to her, I do not forsake you. I do not blame you. Go and sin no more." Jesus understood, and he was a channel for God's love and forgiveness. He understood that God sees us as these beautiful, innocent, courageous beings trying to remember, trying to have our life mission, trying to perfect our spiritual seeking. And because of him, this beautiful day of Easter is a celebration over light, over darkness, the beautiful days that are getting lighter and lighter, and the beautiful sunshine that's warming our hearts and souls, and the beautiful flowers that are blossoming. But that's in our internal garden too. It's our internal light that's awakening at this time. And he said, the way out of all sorrow is to tune to the light of God. And Jesus held up his consciousness to the light, and he held that spiritual eye throughout his whole experience. Swami Kriyananda said this beautiful thing. He said, as Christ resurrected himself, I want to resurrect myself. Whatever I have been, whatever faults I have had, whatever attachments I have held, whatever I have done wrong in my life, that belongs in the past. Make this your Easter affirmation. From now on, I will be a saint. In Autobiography of a Yogi, there was a true saint, Teresa Newman, and she said she did not eat. If you ever read the book, it's a beautiful story. And she really describes how she lived by God's light, by that example. And in Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda said, your sacred life is a demonstration of truth uttered by Christ. And that each week she went through that whole passion, right? She went through that that whole week of Palm Sunday where everyone was Hosanna in the highest, celebrating Jesus, and then crucify him that week. But she went through that passion of Christ each week, and that was her experience. And physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, she really felt that as she went through it. And I think this time of year, as we go through Palm Sunday through Easter, we can truly use this Holy Week to really tune into what it means to be a disciple, what it means to be a spiritual seeker, that everything that we're going through, to not lose sight of God, to bear our cross and to keep rising above our difficulties, to keep bringing light into the darkness of our fears and our pain and our worries and our hurt. And so each week she experienced that whole passion of Christ, and it was in every aspect of herself. But she looked forward to these visions of the Lord. And as we tune into the power of this, reenactment each Easter, it really can bring our capacity to grow as a spiritual seeker, as a pilgrim of God. And because of him, there is resurrection for every soul. This is a little bit awkward. Because of him, Jesus never lost sight of God. He knew his mission was for an important reason, and it was for us. And when Mary Magdalene stayed with him throughout the journey of the crucifixion, how hard that must have been for her to watch that pain and that hurt and the cruelty and the meanness and the mass consciousness of crucify him. That darkness that we all carry, but we're all trying to move to the light. And that very next Sunday, Easter morning, Mary went weeping to the tomb to find the rock, and it was moved, she found, and Jesus was missing. And angels of light stood by the tomb and said, "He has risen, just as he said he would. Go tell the disciples, you have seen him again, and you will see him this day." And Mary Magdalene, weeping, just went back, could not believe this resurrection. And yet she knew that that's what Jesus was. He was come back on that third day because he wanted to show us the possibilities that we all have, that we have life everlasting, that we will resurrect, that when we let go of our body, as Yogananda says, the ego is our body. It's attached. Is our body attached, and our attachment to our body. And so this day we are called to Christ consciousness, into everlasting life. And Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And because of him, we know our beloved Christ consciousness. We know to keep rising up into that higher consciousness, into the truth of who we are. And so because of him, we all realize that just like Jesus, we are a child of God. We are his beloved. He's rooting for us through all the times that we seem to fall, but we keep trying to rise up. We keep being lifted out of the darkness of our fears and delusions. And there's a beautiful story of a child named Jeremy. And Jeremy was born with some real emotional and developmental, and he had some real physical illness that was going to not let him live very long, but his parents really wanted him to have a normal experience of life. And so they brought him to school and into a regular classroom, and Miss Miller was, really a well-intentioned teacher, but it was really difficult. There were times he was very disruptive and difficult, and the other kids would get disturbed, and he would get really upset and angry. Other times he'd say, "I love you, Miss Miller," and hug her, and she was just really trying to do her best as a teacher. And one day she just prayed. She was at her limit and just prayed, "Please, God, help me to see the highest and best good in this little boy, and help me to be the best teacher I can, and help me to, see the suffering of this child in the family and rise above it. Even though she struggled with impatience and frustration and wanted to consider, the other kids in the classroom, she really prayed for this inner guidance. And it was springtime and it was Easter time, the time of new beginnings. And she talked about the story of Jesus, and she gave each of one of them a plastic egg to bring home and to bring back the next day. And she said, bring back something that shows new life. And the next day, she went around the room and one child handed her an egg and she opened it and it was a flower. And that's right. The springtime, the flowers, the new beginnings. And another child had a little plastic butterfly, that symbol of transformation, right? That symbol of coming out of our cocoon of ignorance and flying into the truth of who we are and spreading our wings into our highest potential. And then she got to Jeremy's little egg and she opened it and it was empty. And she said, okay, he didn't get my lesson. So I'm just going to kind of put it aside. But Jeremy said, wait, what about my egg? And she said, well, Jeremy, your egg is empty. And you must have, not followed the instructions, love. And he said, but you need to ask me about mine. And she said, well, your egg is empty. And he said, yes, but that Jesus's tomb was empty. And when she caught her breath, she said, do you know why? Oh, yes. Jesus was killed, but then he went home to his Father. And his Father raised him up. Not long after that, Jeremy transitioned from this world, and at his funeral, there were 19 other eggs from the classroom, all empty on his coffin. Each one of them knowing that Jeremy had risen up into, his tomb was empty because his soul went into God. And that's what Jesus wants us to know this day. Each one of us will never die. We will have everlasting life. We will have a love that is the most incredible thing in the world. And because of him, we know we are so loved. We know that we are a child of God, that we can live in the light. We know that unconditional love is ours. And as Yogananda said, on this beautiful day of Easter, he said, I pray that you celebrate this sacred occasion of Easter and Christ's resurrection, his glorious victory over light, over darkness, his divine example and his blessing in our own efforts resurrect into our own true nature. It's because of him. Happy Easter, everybody. Now we have our opportunity. Please think what you would like to do. Place it in your right hand and repeat after me. Divine Mother, we offer to thee the fruit of our labors. We offer to thee the fruit of our labors. Bless this offering. That it serve as a channel of thy light. That it serve as a channel of thy light to truth-seeking souls everywhere.